Welcome to EPI STEM podcast. This EPI STEM podcast is brought to you from the National Centre of STEM Education at the School of Education in the University of Limerick. I'm your host, Geraldine Simi, and I'm the Professor of STEM Education here at the Centre and the Director of EPI STEM. And my co-host,
Michelle Starr, and I am the Research Liaison Officer in EPI STEM.
Welcome back, everybody, and we're delighted to have a very special guest here with us today. Our special guest is Manus McDyer, and Manus is here as a university teacher in the School of Education here in the University of Limerick, and he's in the field of technology education. Manus, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. I'm delighted to be here.
Lovely. And Michelle is joining us
Manus.
as well. Michelle is joining us online. So, Michelle, how are you doing there?
Very, very well, and it's great to be here this morning. And Manus, thanks so much for joining us as our.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Great to be here too.
Yeah, lovely. And so, Manus, before we start, we usually have like our little, warm up, I suppose, a bit of personal information about where you're from, how you got this bug to be involved in engineering and graphics and technology, and where all that interest came from. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe where you're from and that early school life and how that helped maybe that passion into where you are today?
Aye, so I'm just from a relatively small town in Glenties, County Donegal, and I suppose my upbringing was very much in the countryside. And when I went to a fantastic secondary school, St Columba's Comprehensive School, it was a matter of which technology subject I was going to choose. So fortunately, I was able to choose technical graphics at the time, which is now called graphics, and as well as metalwork, which of course is called engineering. And I had very, very positive experiences with that at junior cycle, and followed then with engineering then for senior cycle, and that kind of bug, as you said, for technology education led me then to go down the route of becoming a technology educator as such.
Yeah, that's lovely. And of course, Glenties, County Donegal. I mean, I always think everyone in Donegal, even just their speaking voices, I suppose we have the world of beautiful singers from Donegal. I've been in Glenties. It's an absolutely gorgeous place. Was music part of the life growing up there?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a multitude of, renowned Donegal fiddlers. I suppose I'm a fiddler player myself, but Damien McGee and Seamus Gibson, and I've neighbours of Vincent and Jimmy Campbell just up the road now. So I think music was a massive part, and I'm very, very lucky to be from the part of Donegal, the part of Ireland that I come from.
Lovely. And then the school, was that co-ed? Was it a comprehensive school? Did you say?
Yeah, it was a comprehensive mixed school. Yeah, so we had very lucky to have a range of a suite of subjects that we could choose from. So the difficult decision is what subjects I was going to choose when I left primary school.
Yeah, that's the hard bit. Michelle, do you want to comment here on any of this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm amazed that you had that choice of technology studies from the time you went into your secondary school, which I don't know. It sounds very unusual. But was it teachers that connected you there, or was it that musical side of you, but that gave you that love for the technology studies and to bring it on further then down in your third level studies within education?
I think it was a range of things. Like, of course, I had very good teachers and teachers that extended beyond technology education, engineering and graphics. My parents had a big part to play in that kind of thing as well. And I think I always loved problem solving, I always loved design and being creative. And I suppose when I was an 11-year-old going on to secondary school, the freedom of using your imagination, your creativity, your beliefs and what you're passionate about, and seeing these things take into realisation and different projects was a fascinating thing. And I think from a student perspective at the time, I thought it was great to be able to facilitate these kind of experiences. So then when I kind of reflected on that, when I was, of course, filling out my CAO application, I thought, yeah, I think teaching was innate. I think I always wanted to kind of help people. And then from that reflection, as I said, being able to support students, utilise their imagination, their creativity, and seeing their own personality and their designs and engagements on a subject, I thought, yeah, technology education is fantastic for that. Not only am I going to get to know my students, I'm going to help them bring their thoughts to realisation. Yes. I thought that's quite a special thing that not necessarily all points of education get to do that. And suppose within the technology suite, it is fascinating, and it still is fascinating.
Absolutely, it is. And the other piece about that, I suppose, I mean, what you're already saying to me is holistic education, and including that piece that you're actually teaching young people the technology. So you've got the young people in the mix, as well as the technology, as well as the design, as well as the engineering. You have a whole interesting complexity there already in the whole space. And I suppose we also very much, Michelle and myself, very much like the work of Maxine Green on imagination and the importance of values and the importance of imagination as well for bringing out the creativity. So you want the kind of the technical abilities and skills, but you also need a whole lot more, and passion as well. So you came into UL then, and so I see here between 2017 and 21, you did a Bachelor, a BTech Ed, is it? Tell us about that degree very briefly.
Yeah, so it's a 4-year degree, and you'll qualify as a second level teacher in the subjects of engineering, graphics, or technical, or DCG, I should say, and technology. So across the 4 years, you not only develop your subjects and procedural knowledge and the holistic student, but I think from my personal perspective, coming from maybe quite a shy place in secondary school, the amount of development you make as a person is fantastic. Particularly, maybe talking on a podcast mightn't been something I was thinking about when I was leaving school, but it's these experiences when you're in a group, a cohort of students who are also trying to find their teacher voice and their identity. You get very, very comfortable within people's being around people and teaching. And I think that not only the subjects and the level that we get to with the subjects in terms of precision engineering, utilising advanced machines and technology, and as well as communicating through graphics, there's a massive piece here in terms of your personal development and fostering of a particular identity that you want to be as a teacher. So I think that's often kind of overlooked, that we get bound to the subjects.
It is.
But it's a lot more than that.
It is.
Of course, it's a massive part to play as well. But
it is.
I think from a personal development, it's a fantastic place.
You made me think now for a minute about Kathleen Lynch when she talks about the hidden curriculum, that there is kind of a cultural piece there, socialising, learning to be, kind of beyond the journey of becoming a person, your own development, reflexive positioning and all that. A lot of the young student teachers probably don't even fully get what a reflective practice is, but as you go on further in life, you realise the importance of it. And if you make mistakes, you kind of pick yourself up and you go again. And in fact, design thinking, I would imagine, and even being involved in design would actually be very much about working outside the box, taking a chance. It's not risk averse anyway. It has to be a different type. So you're pushing the boundaries there, and that's very exciting as well as growth and human development. Michelle, do you want to add anything there?
Well, what I'm seeing from everything that Manus is saying, because you were talking, Manus, initially when you were in second level education, about that creative side. You love that creativity side of what you were, the technology aspect attracted you to it, the problem solving. You had a passion for it, a belief, and it allowed a bit of risk as well. And that then brought you onto the technology of education. And then just hearing about you talking about you during your studies in the technology of education, about finding your own teacher voice and the atmosphere and the socialization with your peers and within the School of Education in your studies, that you developed your own identity. It will allow you, and of course it's still developing, and that is all the cultural piece. Then have you ever thought that is all, you're now going into, and you'll talk about it now, and I'll ask you to talk about it further, you're bringing the technology education studies further, that the arts is in there, within what you're talking about. It's not just about the STEM, the scientific and technological, but the arts has been there from the moment you had that, you went in and you had that choice of doing the technology studies in second level, and how that has engaged, through your studies now. Maybe you can talk about your studies now, and then we can talk about the arts and how it all fits in together, that creative side, the visualization, the storytelling, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I don't think I've been asked something of that before, but I think I think with coming up in a traditional music background, and myself and my brother and my family all gather around Christmas playing music and stuff. I think it's a collaboration and nearly a celebration of your creativity in terms of your arts or your musical, I suppose, passion, and being comfortable in that space. That okay, I'm gonna try this new tune that I just learnt, or I'm gonna put this flair on this tune. And that confidence and that immediately, I can see a connection there in terms of your design and in terms of technology education. And if you think of an artist, their creative freedom, but their confidence and their courage and their persistence and their resilience to stick up for their passions and what they believe in, that's a massive thing. And particularly with I'm researching about design, is that this confidence is, if you don't have the confidence to design, you have to develop it. I suppose as a kind of crude way to put it, but it's I would describe, I suppose, design as very, very sensitive. In an ideal world, which I hope to live in, is that design is you're really expanding your knowledge base, that you're designing something that never has been seen before. And so something that hasn't been seen before, you're trying to look and design something now that you don't know what it's going to look like. Yeah. So how do you get to that place? So you start in ambiguity, you end in ambiguity because you don't know how it's going to work, or you don't know how somebody's going to react to it. And I give you an example, I suppose, and I interviewed teachers and that, and some teachers talk about the continuum of technology education and starting first year with engineering. And they might give students, okay, you have 3 different colours of acrylic. I want you to choose a colour, and that's it, and that's the design element. And then you go to 6th year, and okay, I want you to design a helicopter that has a winch and it has a door that's automatically open and closed. But I would describe that sensitivity of choosing a colour when you're 11 or 12 years old. You're automatically thinking, okay, I chose red. I'm the only one in the class now that chose red. I thought everybody was choosing red. And now you're thinking, geez, I need to be confident in my decision as red. It doesn't matter if it's just that. That's the design element. That's the confidence. That's the creative license. That if you believe in that, you're going to stick to it. And there was a reason you initially, maybe subconsciously, chose that colour. So by the time then you get to the Leaving Cert in 6 years, I said about designing that helicopter with that winch and whatever else, you have to be confident. And it's that, if we crush confidence as that 11 or 12-year-old, if somebody didn't like that colour red, how can you expect anybody to design a massive, complicated project?
Yeah, I think what you're saying that's making sense to me is that we're actually working in a future of uncertainty, and without that frightening anybody, that should revive us into realising, that there's the not yet thought, there's space there for new thinking, and that's actually what we bring when we're in university to the world. That openness, that constant curiosity, openness, all of that. And one thing that I'm hearing you talk about, which I can identify with, is that kind of, sitting around with the family and with the friends, playing music and singing or whatever else is going on in that artistic space, that self-efficacy around the confidence of what you bring to that space, but the harmony then when the whole group works together. And yes, as you put in the lovely twist into the music, but what I kind of learn when I look at those layers and layers that are in music and layers now in STEM as the professor of STEM, and I look at all the layers, I actually see now that you can be technically fully competent, but you don't get you haven't got the zeitgeist in the music either. So there's the measurable pieces, and there's the artistic piece, and there's that flair piece, and as you call it, that sensitivity piece, which is just so lovely. That it is, this might be a lovely time to say, well, after your first class honours, grade 1 and everything in your degree, you went on and worked part-time here as assistant teacher, but now you're a university teacher since 2023, and the university are lucky to have you in the School of Education as well, as a university teacher here. So you're actually doing that, but at the same time you're doing a PhD study, so that's wonderful. You're bringing that marriage of teaching and research together. So who are you doing the PhD with? First of all, we better honour the supervisors, and then you can tell us the title of your PhD and we might chat about it.
Yeah, so I have a fantastic supervisory team made up of Dr Jeff Buckley, Dr Ronan Dunbar, Dr Niekie Blom and Dr Niall Seery, and they're associated with the TUS Midlands, so Technological University of the Shannons. And I suppose the title of my PhD is Investigating the Complexities of Design within Technology Education. And I am completely aware that is an incredibly broad title. But that, I suppose, is the space I'm in with the uncertainty of design within our field. So,
and you're using grounded theory, you say, in the study as well. What on earth do you mean by design in this instance? I mean, the complexities of design. I can understand complexity. I adore that word. I just think that's the new word we should be all holding on to, that these aren't all pitter-patter, straightforward recipes. What do you mean by design in technology education?
I suppose there's a multitude of ways you can look at that in terms of the act of design or designing, the verb, the word design, what it means to design. You can also look at design thinking. And if I just, provide context, is that in our technology education field, particularly in our Irish context, we have to, in the specifications, students have to design elements. There's a design project. And so I suppose where the complexity lies is that there's ambiguity in how we describe the act of design or designing. There's not a universal definition for design. Along with that, there's, I suppose, a misconception that there is a design process. There's a multitude of design processes, and it's not an exhaustive list. So a design process that might work for me might not work for you, might not work for Michelle, might not work for anybody else. So it's the complexity lies in, okay, we don't know what design process to use. Do I know how to teach something that's ambiguous? But I need students to design. So now it's like, right, that sounds incredibly complex.
Does it have foundational skills that are needed by everybody or anything? Is there anything at all there that you can do to help somebody get step by? Is there any kind of a ladder at all on it, or is it just all wide open?
No, there's absolutely a ladder. The problem solving, your procedural knowledge, your reflective capacity. If I was to describe a designer to anybody, it could be labelled as a problem solver, an engineer, a musician, a teacher. So I suppose the thing that I'm grappling with too is that how do we identify a designer that's uniquely a designer?
Yes.
And cannot be labelled towards a critical thinker.
Yes.
So if I was looking at design, it's about being critical. Whether you're thinking, your reasoning, your observation of the world, your inquisitiveness, your problem solving, your reflective capacity, your empathy, and then you're thinking, right, that's a designer, but that's also probably most other things that people are as well in terms of industry.
Does the problem poser come in there as well?
Absolutely.
That somebody who's asking those awkward questions or maybe making the familiar strange. They say that's what the arts are actually about, making the familiar strange. So kind of saying, well, we've been doing this the same way all along. Is there another way we could do it? Is that in there as part of the mix?
Yeah, 100%. Like a massive thing is actually identifying the problem. Yeah. So, I talk to researchers all over the world, and some people actually get students to engage in design by not giving them a design problem. Mm-hmm. Okay, I want you to go, right, think of, 10 different types of people in the world. Okay, I'm going to think of a musician. Okay, go speak to a musician and just engage in conversation, speak to 10 different musicians. And by the time they finish those 10 conversations, they might identify a problem. Yes. Okay, I'm going to design a solution to that. So that's where the complexity is fixated on the problem posing and not necessarily the process of the act of designing. So then you might have somebody maybe in a secondary school, and as I told you, I give you the example of designing a helicopter. Mm-hmm. The complexity is not in the problem posing there. The complexity is in the procedural declarative knowledge of how does a helicopter work? How does that winch work? How to make a door automated? So the complexity lies in a multitude of different things, and that is uncertainty. That is, it is, quite complex. And
what's interesting is you're creating a kind of a puzzle for me, an epistemic puzzle maybe, but an ontological one as well, that there's a lot of mix in the puzzle. I often see in engineering, and don't get me wrong, but I see it in science as well, but I often see you kind of start on the blank page and you leave them with you give them nothing, and you kind of assume that they're all starting from the one position, but of course they're not, because some of them come from homes where they have actually been exposed to a lot of skills and they've been given a lot of resources, and other children haven't been, so it's not always easy. So I think you're coming at it in a beautiful way to understand it as a very strong puzzle, as opposed to, you're not saying it's stepwise, and you are saying there are skills and there are this and that, but it's actually it's a layered puzzle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And I suppose things that I'm grappling with is so I interview teachers and I talk to researchers, and very few, if any, teachers actually teach somebody to design. I would describe it as they support or foster or facilitate design to take place.
Yeah.
So nobody sits down and, okay, we're going to design, we're going to start by asking questions. Okay, now we're going to iterate. Now this is how you iterate, this is how you come up with ideas. Because as you know, you don't know,
No.
you can't tell somebody to come up with an idea. And you can't teach that. So
probably goes into the idea of, they used to always say teaching was caught rather than thought.
Yeah.
In a way, it's a mix now. We understand there are things you can teach. So, I mean, there is bits of instruction and there's all of that is in it as well. But that caught bit is the inspiring caught piece is actually the thing that keeps us alive, I suppose, and enjoyable. It's enjoyable in our work as educators and as teachers because it is the challenging piece. I'm always reminded, myself and Joanne, when we do some research, we're always trying to say we want to create the map of the landscape, but we don't want to have such a clear definition that it becomes a recipe. So, I mean, I think what I'm hearing you don't want to have a recipe here, but you are actually happy to bring it into the full puzzle space. Michelle, any other comments on all of this?
Yeah, I suppose what I just want to go, to just expand on, Manus, is you were talking about the complexities in the design in technological education. And what's very interesting is about from the teacher perspective, which is where your study is coming from in support of the students in their design process, I suppose, evolution. Because we all know that design for anyone, it's about exposing oneself, isn't it? And it's about you're designing something and you are exposing yourself because your ideas, and especially if it's quite different, and it's about building confidence. But you're saying about that complexity about, from the teacher's perspective, is it problem posing, problem solving? Is it procedural? And it's in the multitude of things. So going from your study now, and then I can understand then why you're working in a ground theory. So going from your study now, what are you finding? I know it's at the initial stages, but is there anything that's coming out in talking to teachers about their classroom we practices?
Yeah, so I think initially, so I'm concluding my second phase of the grounded theory, and the first phase was, as we were saying, interviewed teachers, and a lot of them would have briefly or maybe subconsciously alluded to the fact that they're just able to design, they just have it, and that made me kind of ask the question: is there something that's innate about design that we can't actually teach or somebody cannot learn? And I think now, since interviewing the researchers now in my second phase, is I think that's becoming unrealistic, or it's not true. That take creativity, for instance. I have people tell me that, I don't like when people say creativity can't be taught. You can't foster creativity, you can support creativity, and you can enhance your creativity. Everybody is innately designerly, but they mightn't utilize the design because they mightn't be in that context, they might be in that environment. Everybody is innately creative. Of course, we have naturally more creative people, but I think the belief is, and maybe what's coming out of the study now, is that there is a space that those people who aren't naturally creative, they still are creative. We just need to enhance and foster their creativity. And I'm just fixating on creativity here for an easy option, but there's a multitude of different things when you talk about design and designing, and that's the complexity. And I think where the complexity lies in for teachers is that, okay, we just talked about the problem posing, the complexity of the procedural knowledge. Now we have the complexity of the iterations, the openness of the brief. So as a teacher, my complexity I'm thinking is, where the hell do I start? Where do I keep my complexity? Or where do I narrow in here? And I think it's, I'd be very cautious that design can be very easily overcomplicated. And we can get students designing by giving them a step-by-step process. So that's another thing I found, is that design is not formulaic, but it can be. So in a sense that design is uncertain. You have to work within the space of ambiguity, and you have to develop your perseverance and resilience by coming to a space of conclusion, and that might be your design. But also you have a capacity to put in an almost iterative approach to design, and a lot of teachers would use portfolios. So, okay, the first thing subconsciously you're going to do is you're going to look at the brief and you're going to investigate the brief. Next thing, you might automatically have an idea in your head. So now if I'm thinking as a teacher trying to support somebody's design and the ability to design, I don't necessarily want somebody to think of an idea right away, because they're not within that space of uncertainty, that complexity of the ambiguity. I need them to be working in I suppose the trenches is no other better word to say. But if they they have the spark and they have this idea, that's just the idea, and they might run into complexities then of bringing it to realization, which we can't foresee. But I suppose what I'm finding is that it's more so about we can foster and enhance somebody to design. Yes. There's nothing that we can't enhance or foster. Yes. Yes. So I think even providing some bit of conversation or clarity maybe on that. I'm not going to conclude anything with this. It's
like getting away from the idea of it being one book with the teacher with reading out of the one book. But it's having now a library of good resources, good technology, good examples, good models, good everything. It's actually about having a very well-resourced classroom with a competent teacher, somebody who can give when it's needed, stand back when needed, know when to come in, know when to come out. It's like, the orchestra of, was it Darling Hammond compared the teacher to the orchestra, the person who's the conductor of the orchestra, knowing when to bring in the fiddles and when to bring out the flutes and when to bring in the band and all the different parts of the. So that orchestra piece is there, and that's what you're really talking about. Of course, it can, and then people have natural talent in certain area, and that can be developed more than others and all that. But that still doesn't mean that everyone cannot play and develop and work. And the importance of that mismatch, I suppose, and mix up between theory, practice, research, and then empathy and affectivity is just so exciting and interesting. Yeah, so I mean, you've been. In conclusion, I think you've been to conferences all over the world. Just name the countries for me already. I mean, that is, absolutely amazing. But tell me what countries. I know. I heard you in Croke Park at the Department of Education's research conference. A very, very interesting study you did there. But what other countries have you been in already?
Yeah, I suppose I'm fortunate that I've been to St. John's and Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada, and then I was in Liverpool, China. I was in Nanjing University in China. I went back to Montreal then, and this year now, please God, hopefully I'm going to Sweden. So I think that network, and I think the space where I am and where the uncertainties comes from from traveling and talking to people in these countries, is that technology education looks different in every subject, in every context, but they still have this core value. It's somebody being able to design.
Yes.
But it all doesn't look the same.
Absolutely.
They don't describe design being the same.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really wrestling with is that I can't fixate myself on an Irish context. So I'm very fortunate because I've travelled, to numerous places around the world. I have every, I suppose, main continent covered now in my second phase of my grounded theory, where I've interviewed researchers from a multitude of different countries, and USA, of course, Europe, Central Europe, Asia, Canada. I have, so that network has allowed me to try and get perspectives from a design from around the world, and try and, see is the data leading me anywhere in terms of a grounded theory. Of course, yeah. I'm not manipulating the data to make it a theory, but it's unearthing certain things that are becoming very interesting. I suppose I'm doing what I'm preaching, because what they're doing a grounded theory project, I'm in a space of complete ambiguity. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to look like. Yes. I just have to be confident and do it. And, I can empathise with people in design then. This is what it looks like, because you don't know what it's going to look like.
Well, what I'm hearing as well in that space is that open-minded piece and keeping the openness there. So when you come up with your study, you're not going to be providing a recipe, whatever kind of puzzle you come up with, and that's supported by research and everything. It'll be very, very interesting. And it's so lovely to hear you talk about the way you're, I suppose, integrating the research with the theory, but also you are very connected to a relational view of education. You're actually educating young teachers here in the university to be teachers of young people in schools. So I'm hearing a whole lot of joined up thinking, which is very, very interesting. Manus, it's been really enjoyable talking to you. Michelle, do you want to add anything before we wind up?
Yeah, I think it is very interesting what you're in, the area you're in, because it is technology education, because it is relatively new. And obviously the research into the teaching aspects of it and the pedagogical aspects are relatively new. And you're in a very nice situation, I suppose, coming from that. In education, in the old way, it was always we'd come up with the recipe, whereas we've all learned through research and through the decades that this is, we need to have this open-mindedness, because there are different children in front of us, different situations, different cultures. And then, and it's lovely to hear that you have that. It's not about finding that formula. We're just looking, we know the complexities. So now to understand the complexities, but it doesn't mean that we're going to start framing this protocol of this is step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think that's fabulous and well done. And I'm looking forward to hearing the next stage of your study.
Yeah, I'm looking forward as well, and being able to see you mapping out, I suppose, the complexity of that landscape and being able to map it as opposed to provide the recipe. Manus, is there anything else you want to add, or are you happy with what we've said and chatted about?
I'd probably add that I'm looking forward to the end of the study too, because at the minute I don't know what it's going to look like, and I'm hoping it's going to go somewhere. So,
my bit of advice always with my students is I always say, don't get it right, get it written. Yes. So once you get it written up, and it'll be a study, it'll be from hearing you talk about your passion and purpose, it'll be a lifetime's piece of research for you as well. So get this bit of it written, and you have a great crew as your PhD supervisors. So thank you very much for being with us today on the podcast. We were talking Thanks, here Manus. Today Thanks to Manus McDyer, and Manus is here as a university teacher here in the University of Limerick in the School of Education, and he's also an affiliate here with us in EPI STEM. Today we have Owen Collins, and Owen is a guitarist, a singer, a songwriter. He's from Newport in Tipperary, a first-year student here in the BA in World Music in the Irish World Academy of Music and Dance. And Owen is actually going to sing now and play one of his original compositions called Refugee Woman.
She was a refugee woman. She was a refugee woman. He stuck you with a knife. He scared you for your life. He put you in fight or flight, but he knows that you're staying right here. Oh, he gave you flowers, cast a spell that held much power. Oh, he held your hand, drew a line right in the sand. So you took his tattoo, now he's forever imprinted on you. Now girl, 'cause you wouldn't follow my advice, who the hell am I to tell you how to live your life? Go and live your life. Live your life, woman. Just live your life. Go and live your life, woman. She was a refugee woman. She was a refugee woman. He got the blade in his left, he got a shovel in his right. Is it you or is it him who's gonna pass tonight? We're both well aware that that you are not the type. So you say your goodbyes by the end of the night. Oh, she finally followed my advice. 6 hours, yeah, she took that flight. Yeah, he got you one time, he got you 2 times. Delusion, yeah, he got you one time. Illusion, what's behind the disguise? Evolution, this is the end of your life. Conclusion, this is the end of the night. Who am I? Who am I to tell you how to live your life? Go and live your life. Just live your life, woman. Just live your life. Go and live your life, woman. She was a refugee. She was a refugee, woman. She was a refugee.